Heyo! How is everyone doing this morning? The updates in between Update 7 and Hotfix 11 are really important to note if you want to get into the game from a management perspective. Let's briefly cover a cliff notes of what actually changed, and then we can cover what all of it means and whether or not I think it's good. I'm going to try and keep this relatively brief because I've basically talked about all of this before, for sure. Brief overview of all of the changes. Let's start with scenery and ride prestige. We're going to follow it just like the patch notes shows. For scenery, they've been given increased radius and decreased strength. So stuff like this donut, it has a scenery score of 1250, whereas before that was closer to 4000. And if we look at our heat map, you can see how it kind of has changed. If they're clustered like this, they'll go a little bit further than they used to, which is said to have changed mostly because they want guests to not have mood swings constantly while going throughout the park, like, oh, I hate it here because it isn't as pretty. That's how this has changed a little bit. It will mean that if you're placing scenery around a ride, you will probably need to place more to get it to that 100% scenery bonus that it used to have. Adding more ride sequences no longer provides the bonus that it used to. I did change the sequencing for airdrop as well as strike, and ultimately it just doesn't give as much as it used to. I've noticed this across pretty much every flat ride. If you change the ride sequence, it's not going to give the same amount that it did in Update 7. Some rides give less than others at a baseline anyway. The biggest rides that were affected by this are probably the ones that you would add probably like 10 plus ride sequences to. Ultimately though, getting to 1000 prestige on a ride just isn't really feasible anymore. Each flat ride now has a prestige cap below 1000. There's an invisible barrier somewhere along this line where you can't get above a certain number, and I don't know what that is. Many people don't. Some people have tried to figure it out through their testing. It seems to change depending on the type of ride that it is. So for instance, a flying theater can only get up to 770 prestige. Don't know why, that's just where the bar is. It seems to be different per ride, so you just have to find it on your own, or you can use my spreadsheet resource when I eventually do all that work for you. A general prestige nerf has been applied across the board to all attractions. This includes roller coasters. That's really important to note. So now the best coasters that you can create are the ones that are very long, very fun for your guests, and probably very expensive. It's not that classic prestige is impossible to achieve by the way we used to understand it. For instance, roller coasters can still hit 1000. It just has to be really, really well designed. Even this one, it gets close, but it's not quite there. This is in part because the scenery bonus has been nerfed from 500 to 200 for rides. So this is only a 13% bonus. We can see in its prestige tab that it's only 26 out of 200. And then here for strike, it's 91%. That should be 182. Correct. Still, 200 is generous compared to the fact that all coasters and flumes only have 100 bonus added. So here we see that although this is marked as classic, it's only getting a 100 scenery bonus. So you need to just rely on building better coasters and flumes now. So let's address the elephant in the room when it comes to rides. The requirements to reach classic have been reduced. When Update 8 came around, we were pretty well up in arms because after 5+ days of operation, a ride would just become old and then people won't ride it. Kind of like this attraction right here. You don't see anybody on it, you don't see anyone queuing. Ultimately, it's been lowered from 1000 to 500 for every single attraction. So if you can hit 500 prestige on any attraction, it's now classic. That's not very difficult. Let's talk about wear rates and upkeep costs, and that's what's actually the reason for the park being so in the hole. Servicing and repairing attractions and maintenance buildings now costs money compared to it not costing money before. In the event that you just let your mechanics do their thing and fix the rides and service them, they only get boosted up to 80%. It doesn't go back to 100 like it used to. And also, there is no tab where it's in a quote-unquote grace period. Ride condition is the bar now. The service badge can expire after the ride condition breaks down. A low ride condition increases the chance of a breakdown occurring, but it doesn't have to reach 0 for that to happen. Think of it as like a dice roll. If you're letting your ride condition get too low before servicing it again, you run a higher risk of the ride breaking down and costing more to repair. And also, guests will leave the line and it'll just waste their time, and you just generally don't want that. Park entrance gates have had their utility outputs halved from 120 to 60. Here we can see how much power is being used and its effective capacity. You do pay per unit for park entrance, so you don't generally want to do this anyway. Refurbishing rides now requires more money, so it's not as cheap as it used to be. It's about, I'd like to say, a little over 2.5 times as much as it would be to just service the ride. I think this varies because it only ever boosts its ride condition up to 80% anyway. Like I mentioned, service badges can expire after a ride breaks down due to high wear, meaning that it might not get inspected properly as often as it can. In addition to all of this, if a ride's not getting used, it'll receive about 50 to 67% less wear than normal. I don't know where this number is exactly, but in some of my testing, it feels like about half. If you have 2 rides that are open, one ride's getting used with guests on it and the other is not, very obviously the one without guests won't break down nearly as quickly. And of course, some rides wear faster than others. You can see this marked here. A ride with a low wear rate will break down more often. If you plan on using rides like this in your park, it may be very difficult for mechanics to get around, and you can't really use staff zoning effectively to solve that problem. Let's talk about ride ticket pricing. It's the last section on the changes, and it's not very long at all. Ride ticket prices have been rebalanced, nerfing heavily low throughput and family rides while buffing more intense ones. You'll find this to be more and more true as you compare different rides across your parks. We can see what the ride ticket calculation is now. We didn't used to know what this was before. A lot of it has to do with park ticket, the game difficulty, all sorts of things. So it's going to change depending on the type of game that you're playing. For the purposes of the spreadsheet that I have, it assumes everything is normal difficulty, free entry, and paying for rides. Let's talk about a couple known issues that still happen in these parks. Pickpocketing still appears to be a large issue for parks that are not in franchise but are challenge in some way, shape, or form, and in hard mode. So if you're playing with pickpocketing on, you'll probably have more issues. Janitors and mechanics feel like they're slower in getting to their assignments. I'm constantly having bathrooms that require cleaning and janitors are walking right by them. That happened a lot during the challenge. Priority queues are still problematic for some ride types, and this mechanic continues to be inconsistent with guests keeping or using priority passes as if they are consumables. This has been an issue that has been, quote, addressed already, but it still tends to happen. Additionally, I mentioned this earlier, staff zones should not be used. They just don't work. Until Frontier actually puts out a real fix for them, I think it's safe to say that we should just write it off for now. What does all of this mean? Put it in plain English for me, please. That's what I'm here to do. Getting started in a new park should feel more difficult, and that's okay, because the game was super easy for a while. Making money in the late game will feel as though it has slowed significantly. Guests will be more attracted to your coasters, pools, and flumes if they are well designed at a baseline. This is in large part due to prestige. When a ride has a high prestige rating, guests will prefer it over rides with a less high prestige rating. But this is in addition multiplied by the reputation that that ride also has. So the appeal also combines with the reputation of the ride. In general, newer rides get tons of ridership, like almost immediately. Flumes and pools require no maintenance and are thus significantly better than before. Most ride sequences will allow a flat ride to reach classic status regardless of what you do to it. I think over half of the rides that exist in the game, if you plop it down and don't even touch it, you just add scenery around it, it'll reach classic. You don't have to worry about that part anymore. If you are a more casual player of the game, and you want to experience some of the management aspects, it'll just be easier for you to do your thing. You won't have to look up constant resources to make your life easier. And that's a really good thing for the health of the game. Getting coasters and flumes to the prestige cap will feel more rewarding. All of the coasters that I have in this park cannot get to the prestige cap. Even this one. It's relatively long, it's really fast, it has lots of good airtime hills. It is still 962 prestige. This is in large part because you can only get so much from the scenery bonus now. Only getting 100 scenery bonus on coasters is a little tough, but now it means that your construction of these rides will matter more. One more thing about rides that's really interesting is that adding too many sequences can create the scenario where a mechanic is waiting to inspect a ride while it breaks down right in front of him. So if a ride is in motion, a mechanic cannot inspect it. You've probably experienced this in your own parks if you like to play this way. If that's happening and a ride is on low condition and it breaks down, then technically he couldn't get there in time to inspect it. And this happens more and more as you add more ride sequences, making the ride longer. You'll want to hire more essential staff. It will save you money in the long term. This means mechanics and janitors mostly. So obviously, if one mechanic is incompetent and just forgets that there's a ride right in front of him that he needs to fix, what he can do is just have a buddy behind him that might not miss it. Same with janitors. It just feels like if you're having trouble with vomit or if you're having trouble with ride uptime, just hire more staff. It's not that difficult. Some stages in the campaign should now feel brutal, but they are still completable. Whereas before, all of the campaign stages, some of them felt difficult in some ways. Now it's on a whole new level. And the campaign is supposed to be like the tutorial for the game, teaching you about the mechanics. And sometimes it doesn't telegraph those very well. So I would actually suggest players not play the campaign. Maybe like the first chapter is fine to kind of get your bearings and understand how the game works. But even then, the game has a tutorial for staff zones when they don't work. That keeps me a little bit pessimistic. But you know, maybe update 9 will be changing all of that. Who's to say? You're incentivized to begin now with a few rides which will make you money faster first, and only then can you start comfortably decorating your park while terraforming. So if you're playing with management aspects on and you're trying to make your park look pretty, make sure it's functional first. If you have reputation on, as this ticks down, make sure you're still making money, because by the time you hit dated, it'll be a negative 10 to 15% debuff on the ride, and you want to make sure that guests are still paying for rides. There are only 6 rides which cannot reach classic prestige now. They are the new Wave Simulator, which is funny, Big Wheel, Helter Skelter, Upswing, Skywatcher, and Buoyancy. So if these kinds of things matter, try not to use those rides. Otherwise, if you're just throwing them in for the vibes, I almost guarantee people will always want to be on Helter Skelter. There's always usually a line for it. You probably won't have to worry about that one. Any of the low throughput rides typically get ridership regardless. Although manipulating ride sequences may seem worse than before, adding more still nets better profits. The real balance will be in finding the most profitable set while still making it reasonable to maintain them. So this problem that I was mentioning earlier, where the mechanic is standing outside while the ride breaks right in front of him, that can happen if you add too many ride sequences. So the real meta will be in finding where the balance is. How many ride sequences are okay to add so that you can maintain your rides just fine and not lose that much money on them? Or you could just add as many ride sequences as you want and you could just run the gamble constantly. I don't know, it's up to you. Charging for park entry when you have 20 plus rides or coasters is unsustainable. Have a look at my park and my balance just to find out how that went for me. It'll take a while to break out of this. Be careful with how you manage your funds now. It's easier now than it has ever been to just lose money. Take all the things that you've learned from the game and try to build a coherent park which makes enough money for you to do more fun things to it by making your rides look more fancy. Where the balance changes, good. I would say yes overall. My primary issues that I have with the game now are telegraphing the systems it already has, which has been a problem since the beginning. The game doesn't do a very good job of telling its players what all of its systems are, or that they even work in certain cases. The game was too easy in Update 7, and now that we're here in Update 8 and past the hotfix, it now provides a level of challenge that many players will take more seriously, and this includes me. Whether or not this holds true when pools and flumes are in the mix remains to be seen, and I intend to see that through in the event that I decide to make a large sprawling water park in the near future. But with that all said, hopefully this video has been informative to you. I know I went over many things that I've talked about in previous videos, but I wanted one that kind of just was a high level, what changed overall and what things you need to be aware of. So thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, YouTube. All right, well, now that that's out of the way.